Ah, shit. We have hit yet another psychological jackpot. Somebody literally just commented on one of my posts about 30 seconds ago, and they said something about this channel called Jubilee. And they said that they did a light and dark skin colorism conversation. So get your tea, get your popcorn, because this is going to be a good one. I literally dropped everything I was doing so that I could do a reaction to this. So let's start off by actually examining who they consider to be light and dark skin, because I 100% guarantee you there are going to be people arguing in the comment section about who's light skin and who's not. So let's start off by looking at the thumbnail. So here's the thumbnail. The people who are on the left side, these are the light skins, okay? So notice how you got a woman who's like Meg the Stallion's color, which I agree is, I would consider that kind of the darkest shade of light skin, maybe depending on geographical location. We've got a couple of what I would consider to be almost biracial looking or kind of stereotypical biracial looking lighter skinned people. And we've also got a lighter skinned man on one side. And then on the other side, you've got some darker skin, almost more Afrocentric looking people. I noticed that the two women have darker hair, and there appears to be maybe a guy on the side with a head wrap or something. By the way, if I mess any of this up, I'm sorry. I have not watched this video yet, but I just wanted you guys to be here with me while I'm clicking on it. I know that Jubilee is going to try to flag the crap out of this video, but I do not care if this gets demonetized. I won't be taking it down unless YouTube takes it down. But let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, I'm sorry. I just can't help it. I got to scroll down to the comments to see if they're arguing about skin. Boom! Right here, first comment. Who casted the light skins? Because half of them not even light skinned. Have you ever noticed that whenever light skinned people join the colorism conversation, instead of darker skinned people actually addressing your talking points, they would rather deflect and argue about how you're not even light skinned. Boom, second comment. Half the light skins are brown. What's going on here? So these people in the comment section, if you say those people aren't light skinned, it's because you uphold the paper bag test. Okay. So if you uphold the paper bag test, I don't want to hear anything about you ever calling anybody else a colorist if you are utilizing the paper bag test in order to discredit somebody's voice. Because you're basically saying that since you're darker than a paper bag, you don't have the authority to speak on your skin tone experience because you're too dark to speak on your skin tone experience. So the internalized colorism is already jumping out within the first 5 seconds of me looking at this. Somebody said the first thing I thought when I saw this was, wait, am I light skinned? So we've got a person who is kind of having an epiphany, because have you ever noticed another thing that happens when you are lighter skinned is people don't want to say that you're light skinned, or they don't want to acknowledge it, or maybe they want you to think that you're a lot darker than what you really are. But then by pretending that you're darker than you really are, you're actually erasing the experiences of true dark skinned people. Anyway, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just getting so excited about this. But let's go ahead and get into the video. Let me maximize it. So on one side, we've got the light skinned people, and then we've got the dark skinned people.
I don't feel comfortable being labeled by my skin tone. If you agree, please step forward.
The reason I feel like I don't like being labeled is because I don't like when people say that light-skinned women are so, oh, you're submissive, you're this, because I know ultimately what they're trying to say when they say that. It's saying something and then also not saying something really harmful about darker skinned women. And it upsets me. Number one, don't put me in a box.
Right.
And then you put me in a box that also negatively impacts another group of women. And I don't like that.
Okay, I'm in the middle of editing this reaction. How is someone using the term light skin putting dark skinned women in a box? As long as they're not insulting the dark skinned women, that's not putting anybody in a box. That would be like if I called somebody blonde, oh, that blonde girl over there. Hey, you're putting brunette women in a box. Don't call her blonde because that's insulting to brunette women. Light skin is not a title or a trophy. Anyway, let's get back to it.
My opinion around the whole colorism issue in general is that we're Black. So I don't want to be a light-skinned Black woman. I am Black. I am Sabrina. I'm a Black woman, and I'm my own woman, and I don't associate with the stereotypical light-skinned woman and what they do and what they portray.
Right.
So I'd rather just be considered a Black woman, just like a darker-skinned Black woman as well.
Do you think, in a sense like that, people can maybe think that?
So we got one light-skinned girl giving the we're all Black talking point. So she's saying if I had to choose a stereotype, I'd rather just be in the black box as opposed to the light skinned black box. And so I think that the reason that some women say stuff like this is because, and by the way, I don't disagree with what she's saying. I think she has a good point. But I think that some women who have lighter skin tones are actually afraid of being stereotyped as thinking we're better, being stuck up. And so there are women who will literally just pretend like their skin tone doesn't exist. And they will do this thing where they will be like, I don't even see color, or I don't want you to judge me based on my color. But in reality, that still doesn't even help them. Anyway, let's continue.
You're saying, well, I don't see color.
So that is kind of
Okay, so I like how this other girl, she actually brought it up. Like, which one is it? Is it I don't see color, whether you're light skin or dark skin, you're still black? So you know how a lot of people in the black community, they get upset when non-black people say, well, I don't see color. But then if a light-skinned person says, well, I don't see color, I'm still black too. So I get to represent blackness. I get to be in black media. I get to be in black movies. I get to be a black love interest. I get to win black HBCU pageant awards. I get to be in the black sororities. When light-skins start saying the same thing, well, hey, we're all black, right? So then I get to have the same opportunities. Suddenly, there are darker skinned people sometimes where they will be like, well, no, you're taking away the opportunities from unambiguous people. So the question that a lot of unambiguous women don't address is, okay, so which one is it? Do you not see color within the black community? Or are you separating people out based on their levels of perceived privilege that have to do with their skin tones?
my opinion. And it is kind of like what white people say when they don't want to be racist. I don't see color. And my own family primarily are all dark skinned.
Right.
So growing up, I didn't. I saw.
And also, this is another thing that I've noticed a lot of unambiguous women have gotten triggered by is if you are monoracially black, like this woman here, she's saying, well, she didn't use the term monoracial, but if all of your family is just black and dark skinned and monoracial and you happen to come out light skinned, I've noticed there are some women that get extremely triggered because you have just as much blackness as far as culture. Maybe you have the body type, same body type as black women, the same rhythm, the same talents, the same skills, the same gifts, but you also happen to have the quote unquote privilege of being lighter skinned on top of that and maybe being seen as desirable. I notice that is extremely triggering because I feel like with mixed race people, a lot of unambiguous women will try to make the argument of, well, you're not like us because you're not black enough. But if it's a light skinned monoracial black woman like this woman here, you can't tell her that. You can't say, well, you're not black enough, or you don't even know what it's like to be around dark skinned people, or you don't have the same experiences. You can't relate to it. You can't give that argument to light skinned monoracial black women because they're like, no, both of my parents are dark skinned. My whole family is black. So what are you talking about? I am like you. How you like them apples?
Saw beautiful people. I saw my family. I saw my dark siblings, and that's just what it was.
Gotcha.
And
another question that I would want to ask unambiguous dark-skinned black women is this woman ugly, this light-skinned woman, the bigger one who's monoracial? Because I've noticed one of the humbling tactics that they'll try to use against light-skinned mixed women is they'll try to use your white features against you. Let's say you're biracial. They may say stuff like, well, your features don't go together, or, you don't have full lips. But this light-skinned girl here, or light-skinned monoracial black women in general, if you make fun of their features, you're making fun of yourself. So I think that's another reason why some unambiguous dark-skinned black women get jealous of unambiguous light-skinned black women because they can't say shit about their hair texture because it's the exact same, facial features exact same, parents look the exact same way. So it's very difficult to diss and to humble a monoracial light-skinned black woman. I've noticed that the only tactic unambiguous women will use sometimes against light-skinned black women is they'll try to triangulate a biracial woman and say, well, you're just a light-skinned monoracial. You're not a real exotical, or you're not as acceptable or as privileged as someone who's part white. Anyway, let's continue.
till recently, the conversation has really come up to the point where I'm starting to ask them, like, what was your experience? And they too say that they didn't have a negative experience for real. I literally see Black people, I see white people, I see Mexican people, and that's what it is for me.
Can we have the disagreeer step forward?
Girl, I'm nervous.
Can I just say one thing to you first off? I've dated a couple light-skinned girls. Ain't nobody said they were submissive. First off. The reason why I didn't step forward is because dark skin, like everybody's starting to find out, the science is starting to agree. Dark skin is where it started, baby. And the reason why I think that I'm okay with being called dark skin and why I love the fact that there are light skin is because we have to realize that all of these people came from this prototype. Like I look at these beautiful dark skinned people over here, and I always love the darkest people because they have no pimples, no nothing. It's just pure perfection.
Beautiful skin.
And excuse me, this is not an extremist view, but we all know that dark is dominant and light is recessive. And I don't think that it's a negative thing to be called dark.
Okay, so I'm in the middle of editing again, and I noticed that this dark skin guy is the lightest of the dark skins. Some people would even call him brown or brown skin, depending on the setting. This guy is performative as fuck. He is pandering as fuck to the darker skinned people in the panel. He's like, oh, if you have dark skin, it's so pure. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? There are plenty of dark skinned people who have acne, blemishes, eczema, psoriasis, all kinds of things wrong with their skin. And imagine if a light-skinned person says, oh, the whiter the person's skin is, the more pure it looks. So this guy, he's giving performative vibes from the beginning. But okay, let's continue. Okay, so I find it interesting how he said dark is dominant and light is recessive. And that's fine. I actually don't have a problem with that. But imagine if a biracial person says white is dominant and blacks are at the bottom. Like, let's just imagine for a moment that one of the light-skinned people were to say, yeah, white people are more at the top and the lighter you are, the more privileged you are. So I'm more privileged than you because I am closer to a dominant group than you. So I'm already noticing on the dark skin side, do you see how from the beginning, they have no problem saying, hey, darkness, this is where it all began. We have the Eve gene, we're the dominant, we're kind of at the top, we're the blueprint, that sort of talking point. But then imagine if one of the light skins would have said, well, I'm the blueprint as far as beauty. I'm the blueprint for black beauty. Imagine if somebody were to have said that, what would have happened? But let's continue.
I think the media wants us to think that, but I don't think it's a negative thing to be called dark. We're the originals, so that's great.
I acknowledge that we should not have to have these divisions and these terms. One term that illustrates that to me is brown skin. The black
Right.
people who are kind of in the middle. How ridiculous does that sound when we're all variations of brown?
Thank you. Oh my God. So now, finally, I've got a dark-skinned, unambiguous woman agreeing with my talking point as a light-skinned person, which is anytime somebody tries to call a light-skinned person brown, and then they say stuff like, well, you're not even light-skinned, so you're just brown. It's like, well, technically, aren't we all people of color? So I just feel like sometimes people use the phrase brown as a silencing tactic so that the different skin tones within the Black community cannot discuss their experiences. So I'm so glad that I've got it recorded, that I've got an unambiguous, dark-skinned Black woman agreeing with my talking point. I would love to see Paris Milan, Chrissy, I Am Aloho, or Queen Trauma try to debate that talking point now. Let's continue.
Right.
However, I didn't step forward because I'm not offended by being called dark skin. I will say there's a dehumanization that does occur with this labeling, like for instance, on social media. A light skin, a dark skin, that drives me insane. Now, I just wanted to address just a couple things you said. First, I want to say I'm very glad that your family members have not felt the impact of colorism. I'm so happy to hear that. I wish that was the dominant reality for dark-skinned girls. Unfortunately, it is not.
So this dark-skinned Black woman is saying she's glad that the light-skinned girl's parents have not suffered from colorism, who are dark-skinned. But then the dark-skinned woman goes on to speak for all dark-skins and say that, oh, for the majority of dark-skinned women, we are experiencing like the negative effects of the isms. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's false, but I'm also not saying that that's true. So I find it interesting that within her first paragraph, we've got a dark-skinned Black woman saying basically, oh no, if they're dark-skinned, they're going to be suffering from the isms, especially from colorism. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what does that even mean? Define that. Suffering from colorism. Like, what does that mean? Does this mean you don't see people being praised in the media? Or does this have to do with beauty standards? Or what? Like, she doesn't even go on to describe anything that backs up her sentence. All she's saying is, hey, I know your parents are dark-skinned and they're thriving in life, but for the majority of us, we're all going to be suffering from colorism.
have to remember colorism is not just social, it's systemic as well. Even if they haven't necessarily felt the way that dark skin is perceived in society, that doesn't mean that they may not one day feel that. I hope
Completely
not.
understand.
Yeah.
And that one thing I think that adds to it, though, is how you were raised. My dark-skinned siblings are my step-siblings. So my mother is light-skinned. My mother never mentioned our color. You know what I mean?
And I think this is something that a lot of dark skinned, unambiguous people don't understand. I'm not accusing this girl on the screen of not understanding, but there's a stereotype that if you're light skinned, that your mother or your parents have taught you, hey, you're better because you're light skinned. I know that even for myself, my parents never said, hey, dark skinned people are at the bottom, and then they're going to be jealous of you because of your skin tone, and then they're going to wish they looked like you. So I'm really glad that the light skinned woman is calling that out and saying, hey, I'm a light skinned person that was not raised to quote think I'm better. In fact, to this day, I've actually never even met a light skinned person whose parents literally told them something like, oh, you're just automatically better than dark skinned Black people because of your light skin tone. And so I'm going to raise you to think you're better than others. I just think that that's actually a stereotype, but let's continue.
Whereas like some parents will like prep you for the conversation. It was just never a conversation.
Yeah. We all got prepped. Did you guys all get
So,
prepped?
Yep.
and so that
Okay, so that's extremely interesting how the dark skinned guy says, did you guys all get prepped for a colorism conversation? So notice how all of the dark skins said, yes, we all got prepped for a dark skin, like a colorism conversation. Whereas nobody on the light skin side is saying, hey, this is a part of the conversation within my household. This reminds me of the skin bleacher that I interviewed who used to be dark skin and she is now light skin. And she said that she believed that a lot of lighter skinned people were carefree because colorism was not a conversation in the lighter skin community. It wasn't a common conversation within their circles or within their upbringing. So I'm not stereotyping dark skinned people, but I find it interesting that on the dark skin side, they're already saying within 4 minutes of the video, oh yeah, this is basically a conversation within the dark skin community. Like we've been prepped since childhood essentially to be ready to talk about colorism. Like we've been aware of colorism and what it is. I know that for me personally, I had heard of colorism because of history class, like in terms of slavery. I did not know about modern day colorism until the documentary Dark Girls actually came out. So isn't this interesting? Already within 5 minutes, the whole dark skin side is already saying, oh yeah, this was a normal conversation as a dark skinned person talking about colorism or having to defend kind of my experience with colorism. And then the lighter skinned people are like, that wasn't their experience.
that's
you
what
never
I'm
got prepped.
saying. Even when I plan on having kids, I date a dark-skinned man.
Yeah.
Potentially, I can have a dark-skinned child.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go around just prepping them for the worst. I want them to just know that they're
Wow. That sentence that she just said about she doesn't want to go around prepping them for the worst. I've actually never thought about this until just now. Isn't that interesting how only the dark skin side has admitted that their own family members, friends, or whoever has already talked to them about colorism since they were children. Whereas the light skinned woman is saying, if I have a dark skinned child, I don't even want to just prep them for the worst. And I agree that it is prepping your child for the worst. If you're raising the child and automatically telling them from birth, hey, because you're dark skinned, guys won't like you. Because you're dark skinned, people are going to be colorist against you. Because you're dark skinned, you're going to be at the bottom. Because you're dark skinned, you won't be as marketable as somebody lighter than you. Your discrimination against you is going to be way worse than the discrimination against Sarah, the light skinned girl at school. If you raise a child and you're constantly telling them at every turn about how much it sucks to be dark skinned, because obviously colorism sucks, right? So if you're constantly telling them about how bad it is when people are colorist against you, you're going to automatically raise them to have some sort of resentment and anger against the world around them because you're already telling them about how much the world hates them and how much society hates them. Let's continue.
Black and they're beautiful, whatever tone they come out.
I have to say, honestly, we're all Black and all lives matter are the same to me. In the sense that both statements are true, but neither do anything to address the issue at hand, so they're meaningless.
Right.
Yes, we're all Black. However, some Black people are further marginalized because they are dark skinned. And I understand what you're saying about not wanting to beat your
Okay, so I agree with the first part of what she said about how saying all lives matter and we're all black, it doesn't address the issue. But when she says dark skinned people are automatically more marginalized, I would love for her to define what she means by more marginalized, like in terms of what? Because a lot of the colorism content that I've seen is not talking about social justice, it's only talking about social status. So I paused it right here so that I can give her a chance to see what this marginalization is that she's going to begin talking about. I see she's got her finger in the air. She's ready to start naming things off. I think she talks about social justice, like going to prison. Okay, let's see what else she says other than just colorism in terms of prison sentences.
Children down with the idea of oppression, but not talking about it is not going to make it go away. My mother
Completely
was
understand.
extremely affirming to me as a dark-skinned little girl because she understood that if she didn't do it at home, when I get out into the world,
Exactly.
you know, we ain't in Kansas no more.
Completely understand. But
Yeah.
it's also when I say we're all black, is like if we were to get pulled over tomorrow, I'm black to a white man, to a white cop. What my point is more so is that
Okay, so notice how the light skinned girl used that talking point of, hey, if we were to get pulled over, I'd still be black. So she repeated the same talking points that a lot of dark skinned women used so that she could kind of save herself from being potentially argued with by the other dark skinned girl on the side. This is just my random psychoanalysis first time watching it. And notice how when she said that, the dark skinned girl actually nodded her head, saying, yeah, you would still be considered black. But let's see what else she has to say.
we are dividing ourselves with this conversation as well. And I don't want that for us. I want us to just be on the same page because that way we can move forward in life.
My immediate reaction was no, solely because like I am a light-skinned person, you know what I'm saying? But then you kind of brought up how like what's tied to it are the stereotypes that come with being a light-skinned person or a dark-skinned person.
Right.
And those can be detrimental to a light-skinned person or a dark-skinned person.
Yeah. Right.
Do you believe that those stereotypes are majority true though?
You know what? That was an inappropriate ass question. That would be like if I'm in the middle of a colorism conversation with dark-skinned black women and then somebody says dark-skinned black women are aggressive and like I don't want to be associated with that negative stereotype. Imagine if I ask a dark-skinned black woman, don't you think those stereotypes could be true though? You know, that you're aggressive and insecure and that you guys complain about not meeting the black beauty standard. Imagine if a light-skinned person would have been talking like how some of the people are talking right now on the dark skin side of the panel. Let's continue.
Whether they're true or not is kind of irrelevant. The fact that they're detrimental to people, I think that's the problem itself.
So when I first heard the prompt, I think when I was younger and I was growing up, like being dark skinned was something I would like try to run away from because of the negativity surrounding that term. But like as I grow up now and I'm like living in a time where I see like models like Anouk Yai and like all these people looking up
And
to
you
them.
flawless, girl. Don't talk about them. Look at your skin, girl.
Okay, so notice how she is saying that seeing women being viewed as beautiful and popular in terms of social status, that helped her to overcome her internalized colorism. So once again, I've got yet another dark-skinned, unambiguous person agreeing with my talking points within 6 minutes of the video. So if anybody comes and tries to argue when I say that, oh, the conversation is about social status, the way that they usually solve their internalized colorism is by social climbing or seeing women of their own phenotype social climb and be viewed as beautiful within the male gaze or within Hollywood. This woman just proved my point within only 6 minutes of the video. So she's basically saying Anouk Yai helped me to feel good about myself. And also I find it interesting how when we as Exoticals, if you don't know what that means, look at my other videos, but I find it interesting how when we use representation such as maybe Beyonce or whoever, and then we say, hey, we feel good because other women who look like us are being viewed as beautiful, people tell us, oh, well, you're just living vicariously through them. You don't actually look like them. You're not as skinny as them. You're not as pretty as them. So the pretty privilege, that only works for that one light-skinned person. It doesn't work for you. What if I would have said that against this dark-skinned black woman right here? Oh, hey, you don't look like Anouk Yai. You're not the same size as her. You don't have the exact same body type. So have you noticed the hypocrisy? How it's okay for dark-skinned black women to celebrate other dark-skinned black women being praised as beautiful within the male gaze and modeling industry and Hollywood. It's okay for them to live vicariously through these dark-skinned beauty icons. But then if a light-skinned woman says, oh, well, once I saw Beyonce, I thought I was the shit, then people will say it's colorist. If you're a light skinned person and you think that your skin tone is pretty because you have Beyonce skin tone.
And like being more confident in myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm dark skin, what about it? I also like it because I think when it comes to the Black community, we're not a monolith. So I think it is good to like display that we are a diverse group, even though we are pretty large. On the other side, I do see how people nitpick a bit too much and pay like way too much attention to the details. So sometimes I'm like, no, I'm just Black.
I'm really interested in this conversation, but for me, my perspective is totally different. I was born in Africa, Ghana. And so the west part, many of us are dark. Then you get to north, they're light. You get to the east and west, many shades. I never knew there was a such thing as colorism till I came to the United States. It's just like you said.
Okay, I find it interesting how the guy says he's from Africa. He never knew about colorism until getting to the US. So I don't know how it is in Ghana in terms of bleaching. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that a lot of bleaching products are mainly sold in like Asia and also in the continent of Africa. But let's continue.
You're gonna
Oh, and also I forgot to say, isn't it interesting how people will say that they're bleaching because of like white supremacy or because the people in the positions of power were whiter? But I guess it's like, okay, what about the people who bleach in these countries where everybody looks like them? You know, their presidents are Black, or maybe their mayors or whoever, the people in power are still Black people, but then they're still lightening themselves. This is why I say that a lot of the colorism conversation, it's more so about social status, kind of associating different phenotypes with popularity or beauty, as opposed to this is about social justice.
be Black at the end. It does not matter when it goes down.
Especially in this country.
Exactly.
Right.
It doesn't, you
Right.
could be the lightest one sitting out of here, but you're Black when it comes down to it. And that's
Exactly.
it.
I have experienced colorism from within the community.
There's kind of like this opinion that light-skinned people can't experience colorism. Dating my current boyfriend, this is a dark-skinned family. I was whitewashed immediately. I was bougie immediately. I was uppity immediately. And this is before getting to know me.
I think it was second grade. I vividly remember I was on the playground and this guy had told me, like, your skin is blacker than dog shit. And that was the first time like I had been like.
So I'm curious as to what the race was of the guy that told her that. And also, once again, notice how a lot of the colorism experiences, they're usually male centered. It's usually a male centered conversation and a socially centered conversation. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just calling that out. Usually some guy says that that they don't like their skin tone, and this is where a lot of insecurities begin. It's because of centering the male gaze or caring so much about what a guy thinks of you.
Oh, so I am different from everyone. Most of the comments like I got about my color were almost always people within the Black community, but
Thank you. Once again, within 8 minutes, I've got another comment from an unambiguous woman agreeing with my talking point, which is that most colorism nowadays is more internalized within the Black community. So it's usually Black people telling other Black people colorist comments, Black mothers telling their sons, or Black fathers telling their sons and daughters colorist comments. So this whole stereotype that like light skinned people are the most colorist or blaming all the colorism on just mixed race people or lighter skinned people, that talking point is debunked right here. And I've got anecdotal evidence because she's admitting it.
then on top of that, it was always boys. Sure, some girls.
She also just admitted on top of that, it was always boys. So, me saying that colorism content creators are usually talking from a male centered perspective, I've got an unambiguous woman agreeing with me right here. Usually, the colorism convo revolves around men and what men like, whether it's Black men or white men. It's still male centered.
Girls maybe from time to time, but it was usually always like Black guys, and that always confused me because I'm like, you probably have like a mom or a sister who looks like me. Like, how could you say that?
Yeah, I relate to your story so much. Both my biological mom, dad are Ghanaian, so that's where I get my very darkness from. But my two brothers and sister are light because their mom is from Kenya. Their whole life was so different than mine, and I noticed it in America. When we came, everyone was befriending my brother, but when we'd have to be in circles and they have to hold our hands. This is second grade, all the kids would like hold me.
Okay, so once again, even a black male is bringing up social status because he's saying the light skin, my light skinned brother essentially was the popular kid and all the other kids in elementary school wanted to hang out with him. So do you see how this also lines up with my talking point about how a lot of unambiguous people, when they speak on colorism, it's either centered around the opposite sex, centered around social status and popularity. And generally speaking, the comments come from under the age of 18 or maybe in some sort of school or dating setting. And I'm not saying that colorism doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm just bringing up the talking points that other people are too scared to bring up, which is that this conversation revolves around social status. This conversation revolves around who's considered desirable. Anytime someone uses the word desirability or desirability politics, what they're talking about is who's viewed as pretty and who's not, who's popular and who's not.
Like this with their finger and then wipe themselves off. And all those names, they would come in and just, say the worst things to me. And I'm in second grade wondering, like, what's going on? Why doesn't my brother get any of this? I was just so confused because, like you said, my whole head is, I'm thinking, wow, all of you guys, if you go back to our continent, you really look like us. What is this? I was extremely confused in the Black population. And, I had to say for years, I really disliked African Americans. Not my cup of tea. Yeah.
No, but yeah. I think
we hate ourselves.
I think already being like,
okay, so then I don't know if you caught that, but the other dark skinned guy admitted, he said, we hate ourselves. So notice how it's okay for dark skinned unambiguous people to admit this and to say the exact same things that light skinned people say. But then if we create our own YouTube channels repeating the same exact things, we are colorists. This is something that causes a lot of people to not take the colorism conversation seriously. So I'm saying this, if you're an unambiguous person watching my YouTube channel right now, people aren't going to take your colorism talking points seriously if you get mad when someone repeats the same thing as you, but then they just happen to have a different skin tone.
African, there's already kind of like divide between Africans and African Americans, but then with most of the bullying that I went through being perpetrated by African Americans, I just like really started to dislike them. And I was like, I don't want to be in their spaces. I don't care to.
And this is a side note. This is why I'm here, because you guys are educating me. I didn't know that it was African Americans I was talking shit. So it's like,
well, that's not necessarily all.
But that's
all
all
the time. Also, some parents are like,
and that's what I was gonna say too, because you guys are mentioning you guys are in second grade and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, even my niece already is like, I want straight hair. And it's like, where are you getting this from? Like,
but she's looking at you though. I was going to say that about
well, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm good, girl. I became aware of colorism during childhood, early childhood.
Right.
At that. Y'all, they was in, second grade running around the playground. They had a chant. If you're black, stay back. If you're brown, stay around.
Mm-hmm.
If you're light, you're just right. I remember hearing that song
crazy.
on the playground from me being 6, 7 years old.
And I wonder what race they were saying a chant like that. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're light, you're just right. Who do you think was saying that on the playground? What kind of school did your black mother and father put you in? I mean, I'm just saying, if you truly had good parents who cared about your internalized self-esteem, why are they even allowing you to stay in a colorist environment? And again, this is why I say a lot of people, they're not going to take colorism seriously. Your own parents didn't take colorism that seriously. If they allowed you to stay in an environment where people are being openly colorist and racist to the point where it affected your self-esteem negatively as a child. If my child's mental health is being negatively affected by their environment, I would take them out of that school, or I would homeschool them, or even better, I would choose to not even have a child if I am living in poverty, or if I know that I am too poor to move out of a bad neighborhood. So why does no one address that? Why is it always, oh, well, everybody else is just colorist, texturist, and featurist? But then there's never any accountability for unambiguous black people themselves, particularly black women. So I'm talking about the mothers. Why did the black mother not say, wait a minute, that's inappropriate. I need to talk to the principal. Why are they telling my dark-skinned daughter, if you're black, get back? Why are they saying that? I need to write a letter to the school principal or have that student suspended. Like, where's the initiative from the black mothers in protecting their unambiguous black daughters from bad environments? If it's that bad, then why did your mom keep you in that environment?
I knew, okay, I don't have a problem with my skin tone, but society does.
Okay, so now once again, we've got another unambiguous woman agreeing with my psychoanalysis, where she says she did not have a problem with her own skin tone until externally, remember, it's that external focus, until she saw that others had a problem with her skin. That is when she decided within herself, like, oh, this is going to be a problem. So, this is why I always say that you want to have a balance of both external micro validation as well as an internal locus of control, internalized self esteem. So, with that Black woman that just said that from early childhood, she was already kind of dealing with these struggles, it's making me side eye the unambiguous parents. It's making me side eye their Black moms and Black fathers, because where are the parents who are supposed to be instilling this self love from childhood? So far, I have not heard the light skin side say anything about, hey, from childhood, people made fun of me and my parents said that people aren't going to like me because of my skin tone. No, notice how all of these problems already within the first 10 minutes, they're mainly being talked about on the darker skin side. So this is why this channel will always hold the Black community accountable. I don't care if you're an unambiguous Black woman or man. If you're raising an unambiguous child, why is that child already hating themselves within like the first 5 years of their lives? Where is the parent that's supposed to be instilling that self-love and that self-esteem? And also saying phrases like, if you're Black, get back, and if you're white, you're all right, if you're brown, stick around. That's colorist as fuck. Who created that? Who created those phrases? Do you think, was it the white community? I mean, I don't know. But if the Black community created that phrase, that is internalized anti-Blackness.
And that's why I'm saying, like, where do they even get that from? Like the parents, like, where are they getting this from?
That's why, yes, of course. So I have a sister and she's your guys' beautiful complexion. And I remember when we were younger, we would put our arms together and I go, haha, I'm gonna make it. And this one I was a lot lighter too.
No, problem too. No, I'm just kidding.
I was. But I'm gonna fast forward again. I'm out in Europe.
And also notice how he admitted that from childhood, he was comparing the darkness of his skin tone to somebody else, or kind of making jokes about how he's not as dark as someone. So do you see how all of these problems are literally within the first 10 minutes, mainly being talked about on the dark skin side? So I find it interesting how it's mainly darker skinned people talking about their own internalized problems, yet light skins sometimes still get dragged into it or still get blamed. And I think that the main perpetuators of colorism, texturism, or featureism are within the Black community. Even if you look at the divestment movement, it's mainly unambiguous monoracial Black women who are doing that same thing, where they're like, oh no, if you're Black, get back. So like if it's a Black man, get away from him, obviously, go divest to the white man and create these mixed race babies. And that is a sign of success.
Europe doing my thing, music or whatever. And I go to my sister and I'm like, Z, I'm sorry. I don't know. It just came out. I was like, Z, I'm always sorry that I did this. And I'm sorry that I never told you were beautiful. I'm your brother. I need you here. Don't leave me. I'm going crazy. And at that moment, I realized I'm free from this colorism thing.
The interesting thing about it is that in my own family, there are varying shades. I noticed how sometimes that my brother, who is a little bit darker, would get treated versus how I might get treated. But then I also sometimes notice how my younger brother, who is a little bit more lighter skinned, would get treated compared to me or my older sister or whatever. There were girls that I liked, beautiful Black girls growing up that I liked, that were like, oh, well, you're not maybe like as dark. You're not like that dude. Or people would look at you and be like, oh, you got all this education. Yeah, you're just a white kid. You don't talk like a Black kid. I'm like, what does that even mean? Right? Because all of us are wanting.
So isn't that interesting how the you talk white stereotype, you act white and you're bougie, is associated with light skins? And even the light skinned people so far, both of them are talking about how the colorism projected onto them was from the Black community. So within the first 11 minutes, no one has mentioned white people yet. Has anybody else noticed this? And this proves my point once again, that the whole colorism, texturism, featureism thing, it's within the Black community. It's mainly unambiguous Black people themselves carrying it on, projecting it onto maybe the light-skinned people, and then the light-skinned people are repeating the same thing. And because, you're not allowed to say certain things if you have a light skin tone, of course, then they're going to automatically be stereotyped as being colorist for the most part. But let's continue.
To get opportunities to be more educated so we can do bigger things in the world, we should be aiming for that. So when I would get made fun of sometimes, some of the Black girls I'd be trying to talk to, those experiences were even kind of turning me against my own people.
We all
You
go
know
through
what I
that,
mean?
bro.
And so being light skinned in that sense, sometimes you feel like you don't necessarily have a home because you're like, okay, I'm not trying to be white, but I got white people kind of like relating to me and giving me a little pat on the back. But then I'm trying to be with my people, but then it's like, oh, well, you're not really black enough.
All right, can we have the disagree step forward?
We are.
Also, notice how these two, I believe they're both monoracial because neither of them talked about being multiracial. So both of them have talked about the whole "you're not black enough" experience. And this is why this community will continue to grow, because a lot of unambiguous people think that light skinned monoracials can't relate to mixed race people. You're having a similar experience in that aspect of not being black enough, not acting black enough, not looking black enough. But then your family background is black. So once again, you're getting thrown in and out of unambiguous blackness. By the way, whenever I use that phrase, getting thrown in and out of blackness, I'm talking about unambiguous blackness.
I don't feel like light-skinned people experience colorism. However, I do feel like their experiences that light-skinned people can have that are negative. Because I've had people tell me, oh, you know, you're not black, you damn near white. It bothers me, but that's all. You know what I'm saying? Like that's it. I'm not gonna say y'all are being colorist toward me because y'all are talking about my skin. It is annoying, but it's like, I feel like that's insulting for me to say, well, this is reverse colorism. Because none of anything that I will ever go through will ever touch what I know y'all have gone through. You know?
Okay, so this girl, what she is saying is basically being dark skinned is the worst. I mean, that's basically what she's saying, because she's saying that, hey, the suffering I've been through is never going to be as bad as you guys. I'm never going to be as fucked off as you guys in terms of the whole colorism thing. So even though this girl, I'm sure she has good intentions, I think that she's probably very pro black. I think that she's just repeating what her own black counterparts have told her, which is that, hey, dark skinned black people are at the bottom. They have it the worst. They're treated the worst. They'll never be as privileged as you because you're light skinned. But that's actually internalized colorism, because you're implying that, for example, these two dark skinned women, that they can never experience the same level of pretty privilege, the same level of wealth, the same level of success, even within white spaces because of their skin tone. That's colorist. This colorism. Dark skinned black people can still be just as pretty. They can still have just as much privilege. And I also think that being a dark skinned black person is not a handicap. So for this light skinned girl to automatically say, I'll never have it as bad as you, well, you technically don't know that because you're not them. And so stereotyping these dark skinned people, I can tell that she's trying to, I don't want to say trying to pander, but stereotyping these dark skins as just kind of like, oh, they're just the poor dark skins who are just going to be at the bottom. So let me just tell them, oh yeah, I'm not going to experience colorism because I'm not as dark as you. So whatever things that people say about my skin tone, it's not going to hurt as bad, because if you're dark skin, you know, it's going to be more hurtful. You're going to have lower self-esteem because your skin tone is darker. That's actually colorist. And also, I think that people have to remember that when it comes to the dictionary definition of colorism, there are multiple definitions. Okay. So there's one definition of colorism that talks about it within your own race, and it talks about discrimination against those who have the darkest skin tones. So I'm going to assume that that's the definition she's talking about, but I think one of the flaws with Jubilee is they did not define which definition of colorism they're talking about, because that's actually very important. I've noticed a lot of times when people debate, they're debating about two different things, or like they're trying to make the same points, but they don't realize they're debating from two different definitions. But if you look at where colorism was coined and who was the main one that was kind of talking about it, it was actually Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple. And she talked about people disliking each other based on skin color, just period. And also, there's another definition that says that colorism is when you favor people who have lighter skin. So, by this light skinned woman saying that basically, yes, I'll always be favored over you, she's basically repeating what Ekane said. The only difference between this girl and Ekane is that Ekane was just saying it in a different tone. That's it. So, which one's the colorist? Is Ekane the colorist and this girl is the colorist? Are neither of them colorists? Is your tone what makes you a colorist? Is it once a colorist, always a colorist? Also, what's the solution to colorism? Since we're talking about this in general, what's the solution?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Can I just cut in really quick?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's like offensive. It's just a bit reductive. You understand? Y'all going to make me be the insufferable woke
No,
woman
no, no.
the
Say
whole
what you got to
time.
say. Say what you got to say.
I know we talked about earlier the opinion that light-skinned people don't experience colorism. For me, that's not an opinion.
Right.
And I don't want it to be where light-skinned people can never share their experiences, especially when it comes to the invalidation of blackness. You understand? I claim y'all. Y'all are
Right.
just as black as I am. So you should have the space to discuss these experiences, especially if they traumatized you. I just want to say your experience doesn't have to be colorism to be valid.
And also, I feel like with darker skinned, unambiguous people kind of fighting for the title of I have it the worst in terms of colorism, I just kind of feel like, okay, sis. I mean, that's fine if you think that your skin tone just makes you fucked off in society and that you're just the worst of the worst and the bottom of the barrel. And, you know, your skin tone just means you're the most underprivileged, the least protected and the most disrespected. Okay, so if that's how you view yourself and if that's how you want me to view you, then don't get mad when you produce millions of women just like Ekane. Is this really the title you want? Are you sure you want to fight to be the biggest victim of colorism? Like, what do you win? What do you gain by being the biggest victim? So although I like how the unambiguous woman did not invalidate the light-skinned woman, I still want to know, like, okay, even if you do have it the worst and being dark-skinned sucks and everybody hates you and whatever, and you'll never have as much favor because of colorism, and I don't experience it and only you do, and so that sucks for you. Only dark-skinned people experience colorism. Oh, sucks for them. Okay, so now what? Like, do you feel better now? Do you feel more valid now? Now that people see you as the biggest victim? So I also feel like one social climbing mistake and one mistake that dark skinned unambiguous people make is fighting for the title of biggest victim of colorism. It's like, okay, even if you are the biggest victim in the world and your life sucks more than everyone else, now what? You just want it, is that what you're fighting for? Is for me to see you as the biggest victim? Is that what you're fighting for? Is for me to see colorism as this hierarchy that you're at the very bottom of? So you want me to see you as beneath me then in terms of skin tone and in terms of skin tone privilege? Like, are you sure that's how you want other people to view you?
I'm probably just gonna pair it off of you too because I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I view isms the same, like just how there is no reverse racism, there is no reverse colorism. Like we don't experience colorism.
Okay, so this guy is saying there is no reverse racism and there is no reverse colorism. So he's saying that colorism and racism are related, which I agree with. So let's go ahead and actually look up the definition of racism. Discrimination and prejudice against people based on their race or ethnicity. So it doesn't say if you're black, you can't be racist. So this light skinned guy, he's already giving the talking point of, you know, if you're kind of at the bottom, you can't be colorist or can't be racist or can't experience those things, or you can't inflict that upon someone else because you're already at the bottom of the hierarchy. And it's like, no, if you want to tie the definition of colorism to the definition of racism, then guess what? It doesn't say you only have to be white to be racist, or only the people at the top can be racist against people beneath them. It doesn't say that. It just says discrimination and prejudice against people based on their race or ethnicity. So if I want to make colorism a spin-off definition of what racism is, which is what this light-skinned guy just did, then guess what? All you have to do is replace the word racism with the word colorism. Colorism is discrimination and prejudice against people based on their skin. And also, has anyone noticed that only dark-skinned black men can be colorist? Dark-skinned black women can't be colorist? Has anyone else noticed that? Let's continue.
We experience prejudice based off of our skin color, but it's not the same thing.
Or resentment relating to colorism.
Right.
Yeah, I think
I
go
agree
ahead,
with
go ahead.
that. That's my experience because that's why I was saying earlier that I know that colorism can't necessarily be placed on us, but
Right.
there's the word.
Yeah.
And like I said,
found the term.
educated me.
Just to clarify, and I understand where you're coming from. For me, I'm not talking about it in the sense of I'm going to experience the same level of disadvantage.
Fair.
I think a lot of light-skinned people, our experiences are more internal. It has to do with identity. It has to do with feeling like we have a space within the community when it comes to these issues. Because I do feel like we're locked in when it comes to stuff where we're going that way.
Yeah.
Right. But then sometimes as we start stepping back a little bit closer to home,
You ain't never lied.
we begin to be like, oh, wait a minute. Are you really one of us? Are you really with? And then it becomes negative. So that can
Right.
impact how we stand together as a unified front. That's kind of more my point.
And
That was an excellent talking point from that guy. Exactly. I'm not caping for women who wouldn't cape for me. Okay. I'm not caping for a community that won't cape for me. So if unambiguous mono dark skinned black people want light skinned black people or mixed race black people to listen to their plight, guess what? You're going to have to listen to ours because that's what a conversation is. Okay. So there was an ad But what she said was, I have benefited from colorism.
I can say the way I've benefited from it has not been by much, but has been an extravagant way. Number one, I've been to places that you would consider the hood, and nobody ever messes with me. And I've come to find out that it's like, even in Mexican neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods, everything, it's more of an interest. Like, you're not from around here. And I'll make my accent even a little thicker. The second part of the benefiting from it is I look very, very, very different. And coming into California, I was at a bookstore and I was
Okay, so I find it interesting how there's no problem when a dark-skinned person says they benefit from colorism, and then they kind of play into it. See how people kind of giggled, like, haha, nobody messes with you. That's cute. And then he said, another benefit is I look very different. So he looks exotic. He's getting exotic privilege or whatever in terms of his deep ebony skin tone. So there's no problem if a dark-skinned person benefits from colorism, but let a light-skinned woman benefit from colorism and say, yeah, I benefit from it. Do you think people will giggle? Do you think people will say, haha, that's cute? You got with an NBA player because he prefers light-skinned women, or haha, you won the HBCU pageant because they said they liked your butter pecan skin tone. Do you think people would giggle? So do you see that subliminal thing where there was not a visceral reaction to dark-skinned people benefiting from colorism? But I guarantee that there is always going to be a visceral reaction to a light-skinned person benefiting from colorism. This is why I say that when it comes to the ism conversation, people don't actually have a problem with isms like they say they do. And I'm not saying these guys on the screen, but generally speaking, they only have a problem when they don't benefit from that particular privilege. So it's not the fact that privilege exists that's the problem. It's the fact that I don't benefit from that privilege. That's what makes me mad. It's when you get to benefit from an ism and I don't. That's when I'm mad, is when I'm at the bottom of the ism and you're at the top of the ism. By the way, you can't avoid isms. There's colorism, texturism, featureism, racism, capitalism, lookism, which is pretty privilege. So everybody in this world is fighting to benefit from an ism. But I've noticed that people pick and choose what isms they want to be mad about, and the ones that they get the most mad about are usually the isms that they don't benefit from. But I guarantee you that if they benefited from that particular ism, like if you benefit from pretty privilege, you're not mad at lookism. You're just like, hey, this is just a part of how the world is. And you're not mad at it. But if you don't benefit from a certain privilege, then you get super mad and then you want to make others look like they're bad people, I've noticed. But let's continue.
casted by producers to be in national commercials and TV just because I was very dark. They approached me and just said, wow, where are you from?
Okay, so he says he got casted to be in commercials. That's interesting. Nobody's upset about him getting casted in commercials because of his skin tone, but I see plenty of people who get upset when light-skinned women get cast in music videos. I see lots of people who get upset if a biracial woman is cast as a love interest in a movie.
You have a very unique look. You know, I feel like the benefit for me is that there's more of a harder shell. You don't really know what to think when you see a person as dark as me. You know, is he wild? Is he crazy? Or is he just chill?
Right.
Yeah.
It almost feels like sometimes the benefits of it don't really feel like benefits in a sense, because they come almost with their own kind of tiered disadvantages, right? So if, you know, at being a light-skinned man, right, my mom is Caribbean. My mom's from the Bahamas and my dad is Creole from New Orleans. My dad is like really light-skinned and my mom is like more dark, kind of somewhere in the middle. Being a Caribbean American, it's kind of weird in the sense because you have people looking at you being like, oh, okay, like you look a little bit different. You got more of an exotic look, as some people might say. In that benefit, that doesn't.
Notice how he used the word looking exotic. Lots of people love telling light-skinned Black people, you're not exotic. You don't look exotic. Nobody thinks you look exotic. And I'm like, yeah, people call light-skinned monoracial Black people exotic all the time. People call light-skinned Black people with admixture exotic all the time. This guy's probably never even heard of this YouTube channel. And notice how he used that word. Anyway, let's continue.
Doesn't really feel like a benefit to me because I see how my other brothers and sisters are being treated that are dark skinned or might be a little darker than me. So I don't really see that as an advantage.
Do you believe colorism affects us more within our community or with the outside of our community?
To be quite honest with you, I think in some ways it does affect us a little bit more inside of the community.
Of our community, you think so?
I can say not in terms of economics, not in terms of opportunity per se. I think that's more outside. I'm just talking about the way we see each other.
The way we
The
treat
way
each
we
other.
treat each other.
That's crazy.
The
I've
way
been
we
to black
converse
communities,
with each
and
other.
I don't see the whole. Oh, it might be a passing joke every now and again, like, oh, bro, your shoes are whack. You know, oh, you're light skinned, but it's not like a thing where it's oppressing us. There's a
I've noticed, so he just kind of did this stereotyping thing, and I've noticed a lot of unambiguous mono dark skinned black people have had a tendency to stereotype light skins as automatically just being worshipped everywhere they go in the black community. And it's like, well, you're not light skinned, dude. You don't know what it's like to be in the black community. So I've noticed that if I were to try to speak on behalf of unambiguous people's experiences, I would get shot down for that. But this guy had no problem saying, "Oh, well, I've never witnessed light skins like being mistreated or feeling like they don't fit in. It's just a passing joke every now and then." And it's like, well, yeah, of course you've never witnessed it because you're not having that experience yourself. Being light skinned doesn't automatically equal being worshipped in the black community.
lot of, especially in the conversations, for example, light skin. There's an aspect of our masculinity that gets questioned when it comes to whether it's being tough, being more emotional. Like society and culture shows black men to be, you got to be tough, you got to be strong. That's what you're seeing in music videos.
dark skinned black men.
Right,
normally.
exactly. That's what you're seeing more in culture being presented to you. This is like what blackness looks like, right? For the most part. So then now people be pulling your card all the time, trying to see if you're really about it. They be trying to see, oh, you're going to be soft. And that happens inside of our community.
And this happens, and notice how he just shrugs, by the way, kind of like, I don't really believe it. But imagine if a dark-skinned black woman was talking about colorism and then I shrugged, like, I haven't really seen dark-skinned black women, experiencing anything bad. Like, what if I just shrugged? I would be accused of minimization. Where's Chrissy? As a matter of fact, Chrissy, this guy is practicing minimization. You love saying that I minimize colorism. Well, Chrissy, where's your response about this guy? He's minimizing. He's shrugging. He's shrugging and minimizing the experiences of another fellow black person.
I would say I benefited because my previous job to what I'm working now, we had a darker skinned woman and myself, and the darker skinned woman quit. And then I was literally late to work about 2 hours for about 2 years, and I never got fired. And I know it's because the one black person quit, the other one is still here. We can't just fire our last black person.
Wow.
So I know I benefited from that.
Okay, but she didn't name any proof of colorism, though. That's more about race. But I'll let her finish talking, though.
Just being black, because I was once again a diversity number, and it's going to look bad on the company if you fire your last black person.
That's true.
I remember I was in 6th grade, and there was one of the black kids, because I grew up in Arcadia, California.
Wait. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about the thing that the last light-skinned girl said. So because the dark-skinned woman got fired and she didn't, it's because of colorism? So if a dark-skinned black woman gets fired, they're colorists? Like, that girl's talking point, that actually didn't make sense. If they're firing people due to blackness, like, how do you know that they fired the other woman due to colorism or due to racism? If you're going to call people colorist and racist, make sure that there are actual examples. You can't just say stuff like, my friend got fired from work and she's dark skinned, so therefore it's colorism. I benefited because I didn't get fired and I was late for two hours. Okay, well, do they like you at the job? Are you better at your job? Are you more necessary to the company? Do you have any other skills and talents other than being light skinned that could have kept you at the job? Like, being light skinned is not a skill or a talent that keeps you in a certain company. So that girl's last talking point, that was not colorism, because she didn't give enough context to tell what the colorist part was. If they would have said, we fired that bitch, we fired her because I didn't like her skin or something, or if they named her skin, then that's fine. But she was actually speaking based on a presumption. She's actually just assuming that her friend got fired because she is dark skinned. So that's actually colorist. So this light skinned girl, she actually made a colorist comment right here. My friend got fired and she's dark skinned. Oh, must have been colorism. You must have got fired because you're dark as fuck or something. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds colorist as hell. So I find it interesting that no one's clocking that. But I've noticed sometimes light-skinned people are so pressured to admit or to say that they benefit from colorism, to the point where light skins will just start doing the same thing as unambiguous people and just assuming that all of their failures came from their dark skin. So if a girl gets fired from a job, oh, it's automatically because she was dark skinned. That's why she got fired. It must have been because you were dark skinned, not because you were bad at your job, not because you didn't get along with somebody, not because they didn't like you as a human being. Oh, no, it must have been your skin. So this was actually a very dismissive, extremely colorist comment from this light skinned girl right here. So I find it interesting that the unambiguous people, they don't call it out because it agrees with their talking points, right? Oh, you're at the bottom if you're dark skinned. Oh, you got fired? Must have been because you're dark skinned. You didn't get picked on a dating app? Must have been because you're dark skinned. You didn't succeed in the music industry, nor money? Must be because you're dark skinned. You didn't get the acting role? Oh, it must have been your dark skin.
Because I was once again a diversity number, and it's going to look bad on the company.
And also, I had to rewind it. She said she was a diversity number, and it was going to look bad on the company. Okay, again, that's still not enough context. How do you know you specifically were a diversity number and it's going to look bad on the company? Did they say that? Did they say, we hired you based on affirmative action? We hired you based on diversity. 5% of the company must be XYZ race. No, I have a problem with this girl's comment right here, but okay.
If you fire your last Black person.
That's true.
I remember I was in 6th grade.
So she's trying to say that they kept her in the company because she was Black, and so they chose to keep her over the other Black woman. But again, she's actually assuming that her light skin is what kept her the job, when that could have been false. But okay. So this guy says when he was in 6th grade, something else happened.
And there was one of the Black kids, because I grew up in Arcadia, California. It's predominantly Asian and white. For some reason, I'm not going to tell the teacher's name because she's probably dead by now. And I don't want to.
Damn, that's crazy.
She just constantly picked on him,
Mhm.
constantly, just going out of her way to pick on him. And she didn't pick on me the way she picked on him. Even as young as 6th grade, I realized there's a difference in how you're.
Okay, but still, once again, she picked on him. Must have been because he was Black. Must have been because he was dark skinned. So these are actually colorist comments. Both of these light skins are making colorist comments right now. You got picked on in school? Must have been because you're dark skinned. You got fired? Oh, it's because you're dark skinned. Anything bad that happens to you, it must have been because you're dark skinned. Your dark skin gets you fired. It gets you picked on in school, apparently. You can't be a success. You're basically promoting the talking point. These two light skinned people right here, they're both promoting the talking point that dark skin equals failure. Dark skin equals failure. Dark skin equals you'll be picked on. It means, you'll automatically get singled out in a negative way, no matter where you go. That's colorist, but okay.
You're treated based on your skin color.
When I was younger, I didn't realize that the privilege was there because the conversation of colorism never happened in my home.
I've noticed that a lot of people base colorism and colorism memories on presumptions. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people will base their colorism stories on shoulda, coulda, wouldas? Like, oh, I would have got fired if I was dark skinned, but then they kept me because I was a diversity hired. Oh, I would have got picked on if I was in 6th grade, but I avoided it because I'm light skinned. That's colorist as fuck. And you're also basing the colorism on shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Oh, I could have made it farther in the music industry if I were light skinned. I would have been considered ugly if I were dark skinned. All based on shoulda, coulda, wouldas. No proof, no actual stories with details, no quotes from the people. If she would have made quotes, if this guy telling the story would have quoted his 6th grade teacher saying something about the little boy's skin tone, okay, yes, then it's colorist because you're actually naming their skin tone. But simply, oh, you got bullied? Oh yeah, he probably got bullied because he's dark skinned. That's colorist. But you have the unambiguous people not realizing how idiotic this whole thing sounds. So they're so brainwashed that they think that being unambiguous just automatically equals failure. It equals being picked on. It equals you're going to get fired. Meanwhile, nobody on the light skin side mentioned any proof that anything had to actually do with the person's skin color. These two light skins just assumed that their dark skinned friends who failed, that it was because of their skin tones. Let's continue.
It was okay, well, I don't know it exists. I don't experience it. Ain't nobody talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know.
Right.
And so it's as I became more socially aware and I actually seen what the reality of it is, it's not just mean and nasty remarks within the system. It is
being
life
nice,
or
your
death.
teacher being nice
Yeah.
to you.
It can literally go from somebody just saying something nasty, something
Yeah.
colorist.
I don't know if you caught that in the background. The woman said, it's not just life or death. Somebody said it could be the teacher being nice to you. Okay, but that's also a colorist comment. So if a teacher's nice to you, it's because you're light skinned. And if a teacher's mean to you, it's because you're dark skinned. Oh, they were only nice to you because you're light skinned. Oh, they were only mean to you because you're dark skinned. So if you're dark skinned, people are just going to be mean to you. Oh, well, sorry, guess your life sucks because you're dark skinned. That's colorist. That's colorist right there. So all of these people on the panel right now are oozing internalized colorism. Nobody has actually named on the light skin side. None of these light skins have actually named any real examples of colorism. All of these light skins who have told stories, they're literally just naming failures that dark skinned people have had. And these light skins are making the colorist assumption that these dark skins must have failed because of their dark skin. You got picked on. Oh, yeah, it's because you were the darkest. That's why. Like, what the fuck? That's rude and extremely racist, but okay.
To treating a lighter skinned person better to a darker skinned person dying. And I know good and goddamn well, I experience a privilege and I know that it's there. So, you know, that's how I feel about it.
So yeah, interesting here you saying that because, you know, in West Africa, most of y'all may know that there's a big problem with skin lightening. We're seeing it across the continents. You know, now they're having to fight it, make it illegal, but it's becoming so much that people are saying, well, I'm not going to get any type of opportunity unless I'm a little bit lighter.
Right.
Wow.
And to think that you have to go to that point to feel that you'll get an
It's
opportunity.
survival, though. They see it and they're
Right.
trying to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so awesome.
The experience of like being the only dark-skinned person in my school like was just horrible. And being Senegalese, although like in Africa, it's like you're not experiencing the racism you do here because everyone's Black. I did notice there was an issue with skin lightening. Like I knew my aunts who had products, my cousins, like it's very rampant there.
Were you ever close? I'm just curious if you've ever been close to skin lightening, bleaching. Did
Yeah.
You really?
almost did?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're gorgeous. You
Yeah.
better never.
Right.
You better
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Don't do
Yeah.
that at all. You better figure it out.
Right.
What a twisted thing. Like the sun was made for you. Like the greatest source of life was made for you. And because of media, we allow ourselves, well, that's a trip to me. Go ahead.
Have I ever benefited from colorism? Of course not. It's designed for me not to benefit from it. I also found it interesting that the two dark-skinned Black men stepped forward for benefiting and we stayed behind because research actually does reflect that at least socially, dark-skinned women do face deeper implications of colorism.
Once again, I'm so glad we've got this unambiguous woman with the locks on here. She is proving every single one of the points that I talk about on this channel, which is that the main ones who are complaining are usually dark-skinned, unambiguous Black women complaining about not having the social status that they want to have in terms of being perceived as pretty, dating, or whatever. But let's let her finish talking.
So when I saw them step forward and not us, I was like, okay, that's familiar to me.
The only reason that us as Black men stepped forward, especially me being from America, is because, yeah, we get more opportunities in the film and the music and all that. But then what are they putting? They're putting a gun in our hand, or they're putting us in a dress, or they're not. Show me a positive example that you have of a brother that looks like me on the screen.
Okay, so I have a problem with his comment because he's saying that the media representation that dark-skinned Black men get is negative. And so he's trying to equate his experience to being kind of the same or just as bad as the unambiguous Black woman. And it's actually not, because if you put misogyny in there, I mean, I know that technically misogyny, that's different than colorism. But it's like the people who are putting guns in their hands in Hollywood movies, those are mainly white men. And I thought that they just said earlier in this video that the whole colorism thing that they're going based off of is within the Black community, right? So the Black community doesn't run Hollywood. So he can't use that example of Black men are represented negatively in the media, because earlier on they tried to say that if you can't be colorist against someone lighter than you, it's only against the darkest people and it's only within the same racial group. Okay, so then keep it within the Black community. Black community doesn't run Hollywood, so you can't use racism. That's racism, the example that he used. Only putting Black men in the media with guns. Okay, those are movies most likely by white men, although a lot of Tyler Perry movies have Black guys with guns, but okay. Let's continue.
All I'm saying is that opportunity that we have, it's an illusion of opportunity. So when you say that the statistics said that.
Wait a minute. I find it interesting how it's okay for a dark-skinned black man to say, hey, this is an illusion of opportunity. But imagine if a light-skinned woman would have said, it's an illusion of opportunity to be in music videos. It's an illusion of opportunity to be dating NBA players. Then people would say, no, it's not. It's colorism. You only got to where you are because of colorism. But when the dark-skinned black man is saying the same thing about how, hey, any privilege you think I have is just an illusion, when he says the same thing, people are listening to him because he's dark skinned. And this is why I say that a lot of the colorism conversation was mainly just dark skinned people only wanting to talk about their issues and stuff and just wanting to be heard. So it wasn't ever supposed to be a conversation. This is why, with the existence of my channel and other channels, the colorism conversation is ending because a lot of people didn't want it to be a conversation. They just wanted you to sit there and listen to dark skinned, unambiguous people talk about how bad it was and how they have it worse than everyone else because you can't experience colorism, only I experience it, and this is how bad it is for me and it sucks. And then you've got the light-skinned people scared as fuck, like on this panel, and they're just agreeing with everything, coming up with stories out of thin air. Oh yeah, this random guy in 6th grade, he was black, he got picked on, must have been because of his skin tone. Oh yeah, this random black woman at my job, she got fired. Oh, must have been because she was dark skinned.
Black women actually suffer more from colorism. I don't believe that that's true.
That's not what I said. Actually, what I said, the social implications are deeper. I did not say that dark skin. You don't have to believe it. There are research.
It's not because you can find positive. You can find. Lastly, you can find positive images of black women on television.
Oh, of course.
You cannot of black men.
I understand there's an illusion of opportunity because even how you said, like when you walk into the hood, you're safe. That's based on the perception of you being aggressive as a dark-skinned man. That can quickly flip. For instance, within the justice system, we're typically penalized more harshly than light-skinned people just on average. So I would never deny the experiences of colorism for dark-skinned men. The implications are just deeper socially and beauty standards, especially.
Beauty standards.
Okay, so now she's admitting what I've been saying once again. She is focusing her entire talking point on beauty standards. This is why this channel focuses a lot on pretty privilege, beauty standard, internalized beauty standards, because that's what the majority of Black colorism content creators have talked about. So the guy and the girl, they're both talking about two different implications of colorism. Like she said, she is focused on how colorism affects her. She doesn't feel beautiful, basically, or she feels like women of her phenotype they're not seen as beautiful. Whereas for him, he feels like men of his phenotype are not seen as respectable and revered and professional or whatever.
Typically do affect women more harshly. So I just wanted to.
So I find it interesting how she's saying, okay, yeah, now she's losing me, this girl with the dreads, because she's saying that it's harsher to not be viewed as beautiful versus being viewed as an actual criminal. Like to where you could literally get killed, like Trayvon Martin, all those guys. I'm just naming random names, but I personally think it's way worse to, potentially get unalived because I'm viewed as a criminal versus I'm simply not seen as pretty. So I find it interesting how she says the social implications are like worse. I think that social justice implications are way worse than social status implications. So isn't that interesting how she's trying to make not being a beauty standard just as important as people losing their lives? You know what I mean? It's like, wait a minute, the social justice system, isn't that way more corrupt than just like the beauty standard system? I mean, if I had to pick which one I wanted to fix between the social justice system, people going to prison and stuff, versus who's viewed as pretty and who's not, I'm pretty sure most people would say, hey, probably the prison system. And I am in no way defending Black men. I'm in no way defending criminals or anything, but I just find that interesting how this woman is actually so passionate, and she accidentally exposed herself. She exposed that she's more passionate about the whole not being seen as beautiful part of it, because she said, hey, the social implications are worse for women. And then when he asked her, well, what is it that's worse for you guys? Oh, we're not seen as beautiful. He's like, wait a minute. It's like, wait. Okay, so you're telling me that being seen as ugly, that's worse than being seen as a criminal? Isn't that interesting? Let's continue.
Be very, very clear about that. And the last thing is there's a lot of I feel. I didn't feel this in my experience, so this system doesn't exist. This oppression doesn't exist, and I want to be careful of that because, like I said, when personal lived experience is not enough, we got to go to data. And some facts data support, and some facts data does not.
The entertainment industry prefers light-skinned Black people?
Statistically, like dark-skinned Black men fill more acting roles. But again, we talked about that earlier. That's usually where thugs or pimps or gangsters or whatever. And especially women. I think this is definitely one of the areas that women suffer from the most. And that goes back to the first Black woman to win an Oscar. And the thing that bothers me the most is not only does that happen, but then we had it was like a run where we had Django, 12 Years a Slave, The Help, The Butler.
That was a rough time
There was a
period.
run.
No,
I was like,
but
man.
the problem is
Yeah.
that's what they want to continue to see us as, is the mammies and the
Right.
Black people that are scared of the ghost or all of this
Right.
stuff. So that's not.
Who is they? He said that's what they want to continue to see us as. Who's they? White people. So notice how a conversation that is supposed to be Blackness centered is centering around whiteness. This is a mistake that a lot of unambiguous dark-skinned Black people make when they're trying to talk about the colorism topic. You'll be talking about issues that you face within the Black community, then you randomly bring in white people. White people started Hollywood, okay? So why would white people randomly promote you and tell your stories better than you can? If it's that important for you to be on TV and be viewed as pretty and whatever, start your own company. This is no different than the Black men who complain and say, the government put us out of the home, the government and Jim Crow and everybody else made us poor. Black women will give the response and say, hey, well, guess what? You can go build something. You can go get wealth for yourself. You can go do something on your own and build your own community instead of begging others to be your representation and begging others to build something for you and give you a handout. So I feel like sometimes with the colorism conversation, it's a lot of unambiguous Black women complaining about not getting the handout of acting roles, being viewed as the love interest. And it's like, why are you begging the white man to prefer you? And also, this kills the divester talking point. Oh, white men, they prefer dark-skinned, unambiguous Black women with 4C hair. What happened to that talking point? I thought that this is what white men prefer. That's what the divestors say. So if they prefer dark-skinned, unambiguous women so much, why do I have a proof right here, anecdotal evidence, once again, debunking that talking point? I've got a room full of unambiguous people saying, no, they don't. White people do not prefer unambiguous, dark-skinned Black people.
Change, but also like just a positive light of a
Right.
Black family. It's always light skin. Like you had
Mhm.
Fresh Prince, they changed out Aunt Viv. You have Martin, it's a bunch of light skins. You know what I'm saying? Like
Blackish.
yeah,
Right,
blackish.
right.
It's always light skin. Even Fresh Prince, except for the dad, it's all the new Fresh
Right.
Prince it's all light skin. You know what I'm saying? I think so.
Yeah. And I feel like lighter skinned people in the industry are allowed to be so mediocre and bland because people think, oh yeah, this is what looks good. So
Once again, we've got another ignorant comment because she said lighter skinned people are allowed to be mediocre and bland. In order to succeed, you don't have to be the most talented person in the world in order to be successful. You don't have to be the best singer in the world in order to have a career. You don't have to be the most talented actress in order to get an acting role. But once again, even when it comes to this entire conversation about the entertainment industry, it's owned by white people. So the problem is not, oh, white people need to hand out more jobs, give charity acting roles and charity careers and charity Grammys to unambiguous Black people. The real solution is building something for yourself. But let's continue.
I feel like light skinned people are allowed to just kind of be like flat and dull and still get these big opportunities and be in these spaces where they're able to get so much. And it's kind of like, yeah.
You guys are all speaking complete facts. Nothing to disagree with there. There have been light-skinned actresses, Thandie Newton,
Mhm.
Zendaya, Amanda Steinberg,
Halle Berry.
who have opened up and said, yes, we do benefit from
Exactly.
colorism. Zendaya,
Right.
I believe, even says she turns down.
Wait a minute. Remember when Kane said, yes, I do benefit from colorism. So like, you can't F with me, basically. You can't get into the same spaces as me. So notice how they're all saying this. They're all repeating the same exact thing that Kane said. And Kane was called a colorist. So now my question is, what makes you a colorist? Is it because Kane put the F word in there? Is it because she was repeating it in a tone that you didn't like? But even so, you're telling me that if you're light skinned, you can't curse now? If you're light skinned, you can't speak in a certain tone because your tone makes you a colorist? So it's like, okay, what is it that makes people colorists then? If you're agreeing with all the colorist talking points so far throughout this entire YouTube video, then what exactly are you judging people on to call them colorists? because it's actually making dark-skinned unambiguous people look bad. It's making them look like, basically, if I don't like you or if you disagree with me is what makes you the colorist.
Roles where she feels like she's being used to kind of exactly tokenized or to replace a role that should, or you can say.
Also, isn't it interesting how on the one hand we've got unambiguous Black women saying we're the blueprint, we're irreplaceable, and now you got the same woman who is saying that they're being replaced by Zendaya. So all the billions of unambiguous Black women, all the actresses, they're replaced. Zendaya, she outshined them. She just blew them out of the water. They can't fuck with Zendaya. Do you see how colorist it sounds coming out of my mouth? And the only thing I did was I added a curse word to it and I changed my tone.
Say should have went to a dark-skinned woman. So I just want to highlight that there are things that can be done, and a simple acknowledgement of privilege goes a long way.
Can we not
And no, it doesn't. She said an acknowledgement of privilege goes a long way. I have a whole YouTube channel based on women who acknowledge our privilege, whether it's pretty privilege, light skin privilege, texturism, whatever it is. And all of us here have either been accused of benefiting from the isms, or we can prove that we have benefited from the isms. And people say that this channel in and of itself is actually being racist and anti-Black by even existing. And this channel exists based on doing what unambiguous people told us to do, which is to acknowledge our privilege. So I've noticed that they're promoting these talking points of you need to acknowledge your privilege. Oh, but then you can't use it. So for example, Zendaya, she acknowledges her privilege, but she has probably used it at some point. She has probably auditioned against unambiguous Black women, and maybe they did choose Zendaya because they said, your skin, we like how your skin looks in the lighting, and we don't like the dark skinned women. So where is the line drawn? And also, who gets to tell who how to use their privilege? So like, do unambiguous women get to tell Zendaya how to move in her career now? So is Zendaya now a slave to unambiguous Black woman? Does she owe her entire life and her passion of acting to unambiguous Black women now because she is one of the privileged chosen ones? And it's like, this is hypocritical because on the one hand, they'll say, acknowledge your privilege. And then on the other hand, they'll say, well, you're replacing us because you used your privilege. So how dare you use your privilege? You're supposed to acknowledge it, but you're not supposed to use it. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You don't get to tell others how to use their privilege or what to do with it. And I've noticed that there are Black women and men who will get mad no matter how you acknowledge your privilege. People got mad at Jesse Williams when he used that award show to speak on behalf of Black people. People got mad at Thandie Newton when she was crying, admitting her privilege. People got mad at Zoe Saldana for the way that she utilized her privilege. So it's like whether you use your privilege in a horrible way or in a decent way, people are still going to get mad. So my question is, again, when is it okay for light-skinned people to be successful? When is it okay for light-skinned people to speak about their experiences? When is it okay for light-skinned people to disagree with unambiguous dark-skinned people?
Pass by off of this without Zoe Saldana playing Nina Simone? Oh my goodness, we can't get past that. We can't go without.
What I definitely notice is when we look at the media side.
Also, even with the Zoe Saldana thing, yes, I thought that was crazy, but I also feel like what's crazier is whoever watched that movie and whoever was in charge of that movie. So I noticed, like, even if there is a light-skinned person, because I don't know why Zoe Saldana did that movie. Like, who knows? Maybe she was in foreclosure or something and she was desperate. I have no idea. But like, even when it comes to these crazy scenarios of Zoe Saldana or E. Kane, for example, or Chris Brown, or whoever people think are colorists, there's never any actual smoke for like the people who gave them the opportunities. There's never smoke for E. Kane's following. E. Kane still has 3.9 million followers. There are plenty of colorist people that are still succeeding. Chris Brown still has women paying, Black unambiguous dark-skinned women paying thousands of dollars to take photos with him. So I've noticed that there's always smoke for the light-skinned person themselves, but there's not smoke for the people supporting that light-skinned person. There's no smoke for the creators of the Nina Simone movie. There's no smoke for Hollywood in and of itself. People will just say that they don't like Ice Spice. They don't say anything about the actual owners of the music industry who keep on promoting not just Ice Spice, but other people with her phenotype. So notice how there's usually smoke for light-skinned people, and then people will say that they are colorists, but then there's never smoke for actual white people. Never any smoke for the white community. In fact, people feel like the solution is to divest to the white community and create more babies that look like Zoe Saldana. They'll divest to the Hispanic community and create millions more little Zoe Saldanas running around in this world. They'll divest to the white community and create millions more little Zendayas running around this world.
Side of it, lately dark-skinned people will play more of these roles of thugs and anything that can scare you from us. And then when it comes to the light-skinned men, you guys do see that they're making a little bit more sensitive. There's this like, oh wow, Dreamy, he's so sensitive.
The Tyler
More
Perry
sensitive.
effect.
Yeah,
That's-
way
that's-
more
oh,
sensitive.
God.
That's what I'm
Tyler
saying.
Perry effect.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
That's
then
the
when
truth.
you go to the women,
Yeah.
let's look on the entertainment side. What is sad to see that you can have the light-skinned women rap about the same thing, and as soon as the dark-skinned women come in, that one, she's dirty and whatever. And they can
Right.
Okay, so he's saying that when light-skinned women rap about vulgar stuff that they get praised for it. Okay, who's doing the praising? Who's praising them? Is it white people, black people? Why is there no smoke for their millions of followers? Who are the majority of light-skinned women's supporters and audience? It's usually unambiguous black men and women. So why are light-skinned people even mentioned in this? And I'm not trying to absolve mixed race people or light-skinned people from the whole thing, but I'm just saying that the majority of it is usually unambiguous people.
rap the same thing, and
Yeah.
and you cannot find the beauty in the dark skin
Right.
one over the light. I also find that lately a lot of the black driven shows here in America seem they got the women looking a little more not looking accent that, and
Aggressive.
also a little
Excuse me.
ratchet, and I don't want to use the wrong terms,
It's
but
ratchet.
they're not. Yes,
Hypersexual.
The
They're not-
Jezebel.
I think it's also a point when you look into Black media and what we as a culture consume. I think when I think of like Tyler Perry and like what he's done with Medea, and I just hate it, or just like the
Yeah.
Zeus.
Okay, but who are the main followers of the Zeus Network and Tyler Perry? So do you see how I can easily just keep holding up a mirror to the black community once again? And the black community is mainly unambiguous people. The black community is not majority light skin. It's majority darker skin tones. So the perpetuation of colorism is mostly a self-inflicted, self-perpetuated thing within the unambiguous community itself. She brought up Zeus Network. She brought up the Tyler Perry Network. They're bringing up female black rappers and light-skinned rappers. Okay, well, the main people that follow them and keep those things afloat are black people. The majority of the black community is darker skinned.
This
Yeah.
network, and it doesn't paint Black people in a positive light.
I notice with baddies, it is like the women are so.
You talking about the show?
Yeah, like
I thought you were talking about regular everyday.
No,
baddies.
no, no, on the show, like I feel like they do things outside of fighting each other and drinking. I'm like, these are beautiful women. They're talented. They have a way of bringing people in, and it's kind of like the way that baddies paints them is like baddie shot of clocks, and y'all gonna give each other knuckle sandwiches and shit. And I'm like, come on, like it's like I would watch it if they were giving business advice, if they were talking about. But I know they won't. You know what I'm saying? I know they won't. But it's like that representation is like.
I'm tired of us up and still uplift all black queens, whatever. But I'm done with us only uplifting the hairstylist that we know. That's what every black girl wants to do now is be a singer or a hairstylist. Or we need to. What about the black scientists and the black, lawyers or doctors? Like that's where we are kind of messing up in our media. Not gonna talk too long. That's all I gotta say.
The reason I disagree is because it depends on the role. So like if we have a movie like Boys in the Hood, or we have a movie like Don't Be a Menace, it is going to be dark-skinned black people, unfortunately.
Can I ask the ladies one question? Do you guys consume media such as like the Bad Girls Club and listen to Sexy Red and
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that anyone who does, I do not take them seriously if they talk about the whole colorism, texturism, featureism conversation, or women being represented in a bad light as far as black women in the media. If you listen to Chris Brown or anybody like that, and then you have the audacity to come online and talk about YouTube channels like mine, have a seat. If you uphold the paper bag test, have a seat with calling other people colorist. Because anytime an unambiguous person wants to police colorism, you can almost always find some internalized colorism within themselves. And so it's like the pot calling the kettle black. It's like, okay, if you want to call light-skinned people colorists, then you're also a colorist. Because where do you think that the light-skinned people got these messages from? Usually it's within the Black community, especially if they're a light-skinned monoracial person that you're calling colorist and they have 2 dark-skinned Black parents. Anyway.
Stuff like that. Like, do you guys listen to that kind of stuff and watch that kind of stuff?
Honestly, I watch baddies and it's entertaining to me.
I have here and there.
Yeah. If it comes on, hey, okay. I don't listen to it
Do you
on my
believe that
own.
these things reinforce negative stereotypes of the Black woman?
I have an answer for that.
You go.
While I acknowledge that representation matters, I also don't really jive well with respectability politics. And I feel like in these conversations, that's where we veer towards. I would like to see more balance in the industry at large, specifically the music industry. Because let's be clear, if every woman in a rap game was Lauryn Hill, I still wouldn't like it because every Black woman is not Lauryn Hill. This hypersexual image is just
Those are the ones that are getting selected.
Those are the ones who are being placed in the mainstream. I understand why that's problematic. I feel like a reason that Black women gravitate towards this type of content, of course it can be entertainment, whatever, but I think there's a freedom that that Black women feel sometimes. Black women are very heavily policed in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
But telling Black people,
Black women are very heavily policed in society by who? Because the ones that I've seen policing Black women the most are other Black women. So when she uses this term, they're heavily policed, it's like policed as far as what? Are you talking about the actual police officers? Are you talking about their hair, fashion, makeup? Because advertising weaves and wigs, that's not policing you. That is simply trying to sell you a product. So I would love to know what her definition is of being policed. So always listen to what people are saying whenever they're giving you a rebuttal, because what is her definition? What does she mean by that? Notice how she doesn't go into detail about what that is. Black women are being policed. Being policed in terms of what? People are advertising stuff to you. They're advertising music to you. You don't have to listen to that music. I didn't grow up even listening to any secular music at all. I still to this day hardly even watch like mainstream movies and TV shows. So I don't feel like mainstream media is policing me in any way, but let's continue.
people behave because you're making them think they already thought that.
Exactly.
They already thought
Exactly.
that. I don't like giving white supremacists a pass. And I feel like that's what we love to do with respectability politics.
Right.
Oh, that's the way they view us that way. No, it's not. They did not go to Africa all them centuries ago and enslave us because some people sag their pants and twerk.
I'm not talking about how they look at us. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our community. I'm talking about what these I'm saying look out. I don't know what your guys' algorithms are looking like on your social media, but look out and see what these little girls. I remember there's this one video of this girl I saw. She's a ballet teacher and she was like crying because she was like, your girls want to listen to Sexy Red and all this stuff. No, but that's what's happening. And I don't believe that having a balance of the Sexy Reds and the Lauryn Hills is going to be a net positive for our community.
I agree with him. Having a balance of Sexy Red and Lauryn Hill is not going to solve the internalized self-esteem issues of unambiguous Black girls. Because, like I said, anytime an underage girl has low self-esteem, I'm immediately going to blame her parents. So if she's a monoracial, unambiguous, dark-skinned Black girl and she's got low self-esteem, guess who I'm looking at? Her Black mother and Black father. So once again, do you see how it still goes back to unambiguous people? And it's not like I'm trying to just say that everything is the fault of unambiguous people, but I do think the majority of perpetuating it is, unfortunately. Because if you've already got dark-skinned people saying that from the time they were young, their own Black mothers or fathers were telling them that basically the world's going to hate them, that has to do with their own community. That's not white people just randomly saying, oh, I hate you. That's unambiguous Black people saying it.
Community.
I think you can talk about like respectability and palatability and all these things and get into the politics of,
respectability to who? You want to be respectable in the eyes of who? You want to be palatable in the eyes of who? So do you see how, once again, the conversation is going right back to being white-centered? How do I look in the eyes of white people? This is making us look bad in the eyes of white people. This is making us look bad in the eyes of little Black girls. And then for the talking point of, this is affecting young Black girls negatively. Who raises the young Black girls? Older Black women and men. The Black men should have not chose to get with those particular women. The women should have not had children if they did not want to raise them to have self-esteem. So it's all within the Black community, men or women. They're both equally responsible, in my opinion.
whether we should have to deal with that because other races don't have to deal with that. I don't think that's conducive or helpful because I think Black people and Black culture are in a unique position
Very much so.
where we do kind of need to look out for ourselves a bit more. Black kids grow up saying, oh, I want to be an NBA star, all of these things, where it's just like maybe like not even 1% make it.
Yeah.
Whereas you
Right.
go to other communities, kids are like, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer.
Right.
And like we do need more of that. And I think it's okay
Agreed.
to acknowledge that our culture does have a lot of work to do.
Oh
without
yeah.
being
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
oh well, you know, white people don't have to deal with this. I think it's just white
Yeah.
supremacy to like
Or to
talk
even
about.
put
Yeah.
them in the conversation, period.
Yeah,
We're
it's not about them.
being pro-Black is not being anti-white. We need to stop even talking about them. We need to.
And I feel like that's exactly what pro-Blackness turned into. Pro-Blackness turned into being anti-mixed, I noticed. Pro-Blackness also turned into being anti-light skin. And I would say that pro-Black women turned into being pro-white male or pro-swirl and then anti-mixed race, which is idiotic to me.
To start talking about what is good for us, because we are under attack. We can all at least agree that we are under attack. There is a system, but we can beat it.
Yeah.
A lot of beating it comes with boycotting, coming together though, and saying we're going to worry about our own.
I, at this point, really don't look to pop culture for representation as a Black woman. We're going to start there. My representation is not in the rap.
There you go.
It's not
There
in
you
the
go.
rap game. It's Audre Lorde. It's bell hooks. That's my
Mhm.
representation as a Black feminist, an intersectional feminist, a Black woman.
People take me more seriously when I alter my hair.
One time I was on a Zoom call with my manager and I had a curly wig on. And she's like, no response. The next day, I have a straight one. She's like, oh my God, what did you do? You look so cute. What the heck? Oh my, and I'm like, all I did was change my hair. Previous job.
This girl was a horrible person to have on the light skin side. I'm sorry. I am pro, I love my community and stuff, but her simply being complimented, that's not the same as being taken seriously. The statement was, I am taken seriously if I alter my hair. You going on a Zoom call and getting complimented is not the same, but okay.
I never wear my hair. Every single day. Is that your hair? Is that your hair? Is that your hair? Is that your hair? My last day. She's like, oh, I thought you were going to wear your hair. It's your last day. It's just crazy why does it matter? And then I've heard it before too, like even Black women going out shopping, if they have a fro, they're treated differently compared to when their hair is straight.
I'm convinced that a lot of people who do debates do not actually understand the dictionary and linguistics, because being taken seriously, if you want to talk about jobs, the only way you can prove that you were taken seriously is maybe if somebody says like, hey, your hair looks unprofessional or something, and then if you straighten it, then they say it does look professional. That is a valid talking point. Like if you want to get into the texturism conversation, it's valid to say, hey, somebody made a texturous comment. They said, my 4C locks were unprofessional. Okay, but simply getting complimented or people saying, you didn't wear your hairstyle, that's not the same as not being taken seriously or getting hired or promoted or something. So I just feel like this girl has ended up doing a lot of kind of pandering, just trying to agree with unambiguous people. I actually noticed that with pretty much all of the people on the light skin side. They're kind of agreeing with these internalized colorist talking points and repeating them from unambiguous Black people. And then the unambiguous people unwittingly are agreeing with them and reinforcing these light skinned people to stereotype them as being at the bottom. So it's like, you can't tell light skinned people that, hey, I'm going to be at the bottom because I face colorism and everything sucks because of my skin tone. It doesn't suck for you. And then get mad later on if a light skinned person sees your skin tone as beneath theirs in terms of social status. Same thing goes for hair texture. But anyway, let's keep going.
We got some mental work to do.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say is everything. All of that matters. All of your skin tone, your hair. But you go back to like the 60s, 70s when the Black Panthers were coming and all the women were wearing it natural. I do that. I wear these.
And this is why I say that a lot of people, they are gonna unfortunately stereotype 4C hair in its shrunken state with politics, because you don't see enough women with 4C hair wearing their 4C hair in its shrunken state for fashion. So the people who say things like, oh, this is just how my hair grows out of my head and I like it this way. And it's like, okay, but you don't understand sociology, because people, especially non-Black people, they're going to assume that you're wearing these other hair textures because number one, either you think that hair texture is just as pretty as yours, or number two, you think that hair texture is prettier than yours. And I actually agree with that statement. Anytime I see a person with 4C hair and they're wearing a type 3 wig, I'm thinking one of two things. Either number one, you think my hair texture is pretty, just as pretty as your 4C hair. Or number two, you think my hair texture is prettier than 4C hair. And so I've noticed in the Black community, a lot of women will stereotype and then they will assume that, like, if you wear type 3, you automatically think it's better than 4C. I don't think that you automatically think it's better, but I do think that if you wear type 3 hair, you think that it's pretty. So you are admitting that it's beautiful, but that's not the same thing, though, as putting your hair at the bottom.
Because I like to wear these for like more of, I don't have to do my hair every day. I don't want to worry about whatever. But when I pull this thing out, and I make sure I look at everybody like a little serious, because I'm like, yeah, you know, the power that comes with it. And we need to just start reinforcing, especially with our next generations, how beautiful our natural is.
I'm a political science major, so I'm not part of the School of Business. But all my friends in the School of Business, every time summer comes around, they're about to get an internship, they get the big chop because they know as soon as they get in them jobs, if they do not have short hair, they're not going to be taken seriously. They might not even be let in the door. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, colorism has a little raggedy cousin. Her name is texturism. That's what we're discussing now.
I hadn't even heard of that one.
Yeah, it's texturism. That's why Black people still have to fight to wear natural styles in corporate spaces. I don't know if you guys heard about the story of a young, beautiful Black boy with locks who hasn't been to school in like over 180 days because they're trying to force him to cut his locks to return to school. I didn't walk forward because, I've pretty much always been some variation of natural. Now, I will tell you, it was a bit of a shock to realize that texturism is still a thing in the lock community, right? Because I thought, okay, we're all working with our natural styles. That's the point of locks. We don't have to deal with this. But I don't really get treated differently because I have one hairstyle. But it's you don't want to slick down your edges, or you need a retwist.
Okay, so her saying that people speak negatively on 4C hair, once again, they're not staying on topic with what the host said. I get taken more seriously when I alter my hair. So someone insulting your hair, that's not the same. I mean, they should have put more context in this talking point about the texturism. Like, what do they mean by taken more seriously? Because I'm thinking of maybe in the workplace, maybe when it comes to dating or something, like, you know how some people say, oh, these are the ratchet hairstyles and these are the classy hairstyles. Like, I'm surprised that nobody has brought that up. So none of these arguments that they're making are actual arguments that go with what the host was saying about certain hair textures being taken more seriously. Certain hair textures and styles are complimented more, but that has nothing to do with being taken seriously or not. Receiving compliments doesn't mean that a guy takes you seriously. It doesn't mean that a job takes you seriously. It simply means that you're considered to be pretty. That's it. It just means that the hair is pretty. Being pretty does not equal being taken seriously. Those are two separate things. So notice how these people, they're all making the conversation about beauty and compliments when that's not what the host said. So once again, do you see how it's tying back to social status? I thought they were going to talk about economics. Like, hey, I permed my hair and then I got a $10,000 raise because they said that my hair looks more professional. You know, I thought they were going to say something like that, like something that has to do with economics. But nope, they're talking about not having edges and switching their wigs and getting compliments.
Twist? No, I don't. I didn't get one for this.
Right.
No, that's right. You understand? My hair.
Beautiful. Looks beautiful.
Thank you. So does yours. My hair shouldn't have to be neat and perfectly twisted for me to be palatable or accepted. But that is even with newborns, the damn placenta perm, the baby coming out, the mama, I've seen Facebook posts, my baby's hair, look at this good hair on my baby.
Okay, but that's still not being taken seriously. That's just people complimenting a baby. Saying, oh, look at the baby's hair. It's so sleek and smooth. What does that have to do with being taken seriously? You're a baby. What do you mean? How is it even possible to take a baby seriously versus taking another baby unseriously? So do you see how they're actually not addressing the question?
From a newborn.
Hate that term.
Can't
so
even
much.
hold the neck up yet.
And that's something that you're
projecting
already having to deal with that.
this,
From that type of
And also they're exposing that the majority of this comes from within the Black community, which is like what I said.
situation. There were times where I'm like, oh, well, if I'm going to this meeting or if I'm trying to get this job, I'm not going to be able to wear this. Those are things that you have to think about in terms of, you know, this standard that is set and presenting yourself to the world.
Working at Six Flags at one point, dreads were not allowed, or like locks were not allowed.
Which is
You would have to bring
Okay, finally someone brought it up. Like at the workplace, they banned this hairstyle. Okay, that's more of a valid example versus people complimented the baby that had curly hair.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, no,
Brand new.
locks were not allowed.
That's
And you had
crazy.
to bring in a note from your spiritual advisor
That's crazy.
as to why you have them.
We all flinched a little bit like,
Yeah,
not even-
advisor,
You
what the
had to-
hell?
No, that goes back to the topic at hand. This is a theme park. How
Right.
serious do they need to be taken?
Right.
And here I am, a Black woman, having to tell people like, oh, you have to cut your hair. Your locks that you just grew
Yeah.
for years, you have to cut them off or not get a job. Like, that is crazy to me.
A lot of the dudes I know and myself, I like natural. It's just period. And I think women in general get berated by media and culture by beauty standards. I think Black women, y'all get slammed even harder in terms of that. So I believe that us as Black men in the community need to encourage, like, what you have naturally is beautiful. And I think the more that we do that from a young age, now they're going to have that standard in the home, which is really where the strength of Blackness came from. You have your choice. If you want to wear your hair however you want, if you want to get a weave, if you want, cool. But don't do it because there's a level of insecurity or lack of pride in who you are and how you represent.
That's
yourself.
easier said than done, but I feel
No,
I
it is.
feel
But
you.
here's my
I feel
thing.
you.
Here's my thing, though. I think we need. This is the thing. There's a lot of things in our community that's easier said than done, and the problem is this:
We've been
we
talking
got
about easy
we got to
said than
get to
done
the
this whole
we got to
time.
get to the ugly. We've got to get to the
Exactly. The Black community has been talking about things being easier said than done for hundreds of years now. So this is why I say that I give the side eye and I do not take it as seriously as how people want me to, because number one, I'm not caping for women that won't cape for me. I'm not listening to women and men who won't listen to me. And then number two, until your actions actually align with your words, I'm going to ignore it.
ugly work of grabbing the shovel and digging in the dirt. And we may not finish the work. Our kids and our great grandkids might be the ones that are building the platforms and the levels of us climbing the rings of society.
You're a good
But
politician.
We gotta get
Very
that
well
work
said.
done.
No, hold
We
on.
gotta
You're a
get that
good
work
politician,
done.
but
Okay,
look
yeah,
at
go
the
ahead.
statistics of what's happening is all I'm saying. I
Yeah.
get what everything
Well,
that you're saying.
You're talking to a poli-sci person that understands statistics. What I'm saying is this. Statistics, if we don't do anything about it, will not
But
change.
that's what I was about to
And
say,
that's
because
what I'm
you're
saying. We
saying that
gotta
our
do
kids,
something.
you're
We
saying
gotta-
our kids and our grandchildren are doing this. That's
They
where.
could do
No, I'm
it.
saying they can't.
Okay,
We got to do the work.
good, though.
We got to get out there and start
Good.
the work.
I hope my kids are the same skin tone as me.
Come on, Black man. Shit.
Oh my God. She just said, I hope my kids are the same skin tone as me. The two Black women do not want their kids to be the same skin tone as them. This is a psychological jackpot. I find it interesting that the most articulate woman on the dark skin side of the panel, the feminist one, the one that's knowledgeable, she is saying that she would not want her kid's skin tone to be the same as hers. So you expect me as a lighter skinned person to believe that you love your skin tone or that, you're so proud of it if you're literally saying you literally don't want your kids to have the same skin tone? And I'm not saying that I understand if you just naturally fall in love with someone of a different complexion or whatever, but saying that you purposely will go out of your way to make sure your kid does not have the same skin tone as you, I find that to be interesting and very sad.
I don't mind what tone my kids would end up, but I've always had this, imagination in my mind of seeing a little me. Yeah. Because for what I went through and being such a lonely kid, and when I go back to Ghana, I sometimes go by the orphanages where the children are, and I see the kids just as dark as me. And then for me, I remember, wow, you guys have no idea what's going on in America, but you guys are enjoying your skin and your pride. The most interesting thing about this is when I was here in America and dating, the Black girls would literally tell me they didn't want their kids as dark as me.
They didn't want them inside.
So I had a hard time.
So isn't it interesting how people love blaming colorism only on Black men? They say that Black women can't be colorist. And he's saying that he had Black women tell him they don't want their kids to be as dark as him. But imagine if a Black man tells a Black woman, oh, I don't want my kids to be as dark skinned as you. You would call him a colorist, right? So why don't we call the Black women colorists who say the exact same thing?
I wouldn't say that, I hope, obviously if they're the same skin tone as me, that's fine. I'd love you if you were any skin tone, but I think I'd kind of just take the chance, like if they turned out as me, to take the chance to like raise them the way I would have wanted to be loved more, and kind of just show them that no matter like what goes on outside, just know that none of that matters. It's your character that matters, and kind of just bring them up with that like confidence that I didn't get.
I just don't plan on having children. That's why I step forward. I mean, I don't know. It kind of feels icky for me to say I would prefer a child be a certain color. A child is not a resource; it's a human being.
Right.
So if you fall in love with somebody or you don't,
I just don't care. Like if you're darker than me, lighter than me, that's cool. You're still my daughter, son, or they, them, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm still gonna love you no matter what. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
That's my mentality too. You're my seed. And at that point, I think that obviously boils down into whatever the mom is going to bring into the picture. And I think that at the end of the day, a child hopefully would be an expression of love. I'm going to raise you to know that you're supposed to be confident in who your identity is as a human being, a Black man, and someone that's supposed to contribute to the world.
If your seed comes out like this color, they come to you like, Dad, all of this stuff is being said to me, or the cops are treating me this way. Are you
navigate them?
Do you get what I'm saying? Are you afraid that you won't have the wherewithal to teach them how to go through that?
No, being Black is not, even though there are aspects of it, skin tone, things like that.
Right? That's what I'm
it is an experience that we all in some way have had experiences we can relate to it. I know what it's like to be pulled over by the police and almost put in cuffs over doing absolutely nothing, right? And so
almost put in cuffs or put in cuffs?
No, I say almost being put in cuffs.
Because I've been put in cuffs for doing nothing.
And I got you on that. But we don't all have, as Black people across the board, we don't all have the same experiences. But if my son came to me or my daughter came to me at some point in life and they're like, I'm going through this, I know what it feels like just from a Black man's perspective, but also because that's someone I love and I care about. That's something that I'm also going to be even more so able to share in, because that's also my seed.
I don't care about what complexion my kids are. And the thing is that me saying I don't care is not like I'm tossing things out the way, because we're going to have them conversations.
Absolutely.
Y'all going to sit down and we're going to talk. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if there is a point that I can't, where I just can't, because it's just something, things I don't experience, things I don't understand, I know like we have a village. It's always a village around. So if it's not the baby pappy, if it ain't his pappy, it can be close people that are trusted that know. So I feel like there's always going to be somebody around that is going to be able to aid in conversations I might not be able to have, or even somebody else that just might not be able to have. But I'm gonna love my cheerings. I don't care what color
I like what you said. It takes a village. Like, and not saying that I would like outsource my parenting. So, but like I have darker skinned cousins on my mom's side. You feel me? And my uncles are darker skinned. You feel me? So like, whether it's like asking them to talk to my children or just asking them to educate me on the stuff I don't know because I'm not a dark skinned person.
Right.
Colorism is one of the determining factors for power structure of the world.
They're saying that colorism is one of the determining factors for the power structure of the world. I'm sorry, this is just an idiotic talking point. If you think that that is the determining fact, I think it's one of the factors, but like one of the determining factors, no, I'm pretty sure money, pretty sure like a geographical location, the country you live in, kind of the economics, having nuclear power and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that those are probably the most important determining factors of power structures. I don't think that being dark skinned automatically just puts you at the bottom. If you're dark skinned and you're a multi-billionaire in the United States, pretty sure you're still going to have access to privilege. So I just think it's idiotic that some of the unambiguous people are really putting skin tone on such a high pedestal to the point where they literally feel like skin tone just trumps the other power structures. But let's continue.
Just know it do. Like I can't even explain it. It just do. Like it's kind of it just do. I just know it's one of them things where it's so many like isms and phobics. Yeah, it thrown into a pot. And I know what's in there. I can't explain it, but I know.
Now I'm speaking from the heart.
That's how I feel.
When I think of this topic, I immediately go to like caste systems. So like when I think of like India, for example, it's terrible. Like if you're darker, then you're on the bottom of the totem pole and so on. So I think in terms of like opportunity and social mobility for people, I'd say it's a bigger issue outside of the US in like developed countries, I'd say.
It's a bigger issue outside of the United States?
It's
in
rough.
some
It's
nations.
Yeah.
I do, because I'm not gonna
Yes.
lie, like when she said the prompt, it's like I wasn't just thinking us here. I'm
Yeah.
thinking
I was
the
thinking
world. I'm
global.
thinking
The world,
everywhere.
global,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, I'm
Yeah.
thinking globally because it's like I definitely
Yeah,
have seen
there
that.
is
You know,
socioeconomic
Around-
status.
I believe it's
Yeah.
every place, but I think it. Now you gonna start. You gotta finish now, bro.
The reason why I was kind of like, it was hard for me to come up here at first was because I view like a lot of the isms as like how they maintain the current hierarchical system. You feel me? Or caste system. You feel me?
Come on,
So
political
like,
science.
yeah, I guess
Mhm.
determining factor, but I don't think it's like the main,
Yeah.
the
Right.
main
What other
factor. I
factors?
think
Right. So that's what makes it not a determining factor. I think it's a factor, but not a determinant to where it like makes the entire power structure of the world change. Like I don't think that white people have been dominant simply because they have white skin tones, for example. I think that white people, if you look at history, I think there are so many other things that have happened, such as enslaving others. I mean, come on, guys. I think all of them are off on this one. Like, so you're telling me that colorism is on the same level as people being enslaved, like entire countries being bombed or being like colonized, people going and stealing oil and diamonds and ivory and other resources from other countries. Like, no, I think that there are so many bigger determining factors of the power structure. I think that colorism is just a spin-off of racism and like white supremacy. And I think colorism has more to do with social status. And yes, I think social status affects economics and stuff, but in order to say that it's one of the determining factors, when I think of that, it means that there's a turning point. Like your whole entire life is now perfect because you have white skin, or your whole entire life from birth until death is totally different than somebody else's because of their skin tone. And I just don't think that's true. I think that if you're a dark skin and you're a billionaire, you're going to have so many privileges that other people who are white and poor would never see, despite your different skin tones. So I think they're all actually, I disagree with all of them on this one.
Like it's
I
definitely
think
in
it's
there.
what contributes
Yes.
to the main
It's
factor.
deep.
Yes.
You know
What's
what I'm
going on
saying?
is
Yes,
deep.
that's
What's
what
going
it
on
is,
is multi.
yes.
Right. So it's just a contributing factor. It's not the determining factor. I'm pretty sure economics and money and like having billions of dollars is more important to most people than their skin tones. But okay.
For
Because
sure.
Yes.
for you to talk about colorism, you would have to talk about racism, and you would have to talk about
And you gotta talk
the-
about
everything
you have to talk about
else.
no, it's true because that the selling of slaves to be profitable to even then create a system of race in
Now
which
y'all see
you
why I
then
keep
were
bringing up white
subjugated, and it's not
supremacy.
only associated where you come from, it's associated with your skin. Because what we forget is when it comes to colorism, all over the world, if you worked out in the fields, I mean, I'm talking about people that if they had red skin, right? If you worked out in the fields, that was a sign that you were, by someone just looking at you, that you were not part of the nobility. These people would walk around with umbrellas and things like that. So in America, it was pretty much the only place where we're going to say, wait a minute, not only is this something that signifies your place in society, but we're going to associate it with you at birth. And we're going to create a whole system of that. And that's why, to
That's
me,
not only here, though.
I
Okay.
think they're not the only, but you know, I think racism, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the biggest topic that affects us. Because think about this: before all this stuff
Has anyone else noticed the tension between the dark skinned guy with the braids versus like the light skinned guy with the braids throughout this entire debate?
happened, none of us were conscious about, oh, well, you're lighter, you're better, all this other stuff. And now these things that we were not thinking about affects us internally at home, even while we're still trying to fight it out there.
But I think it only affects you internally in a really big way if you have that external locus of control. If you're one of those if you're one of those people whose entire self-esteem is just based on what others think of you and that's it. Number one, it's a sign that you had bad parents, okay? And then number two, other people they shouldn't be able to control your self-perception. But let's continue.
That's why I didn't automatically come up because I just went past it. I went,
Racism.
yeah,
Thank
I
you.
just went straight there.
Yeah, I get that.
Because when it comes down to like who runs the U.S. and all this stuff, I don't feel like we're ever going to get there. The closest we got was having a black president, and even that was like
He was
you
not
know,
really a black
Yeah,
president.
And that's what I'm
let's be
saying.
honest.
So even
We
that
don't
was
talk about
like
Yeah.
that.
You guys might hate me for this, but
Nah,
I
man.
actually don't think racism is the determining factor. I think it is the main determining factor that upholds the system of capitalism. I don't think once we figure out racism or something, everything's gonna go
No,
away. I
absolutely not.
think racism just maintains the class
Oh,
system. Like
yeah.
that's all. I
Yeah,
think.
oppression works on the axis. Of course, I would agree with this. That's kind of what we've been delving into this whole time. And I think the prompt definitely said one of, correct?
Mhm.
Colorism does determine certain power dynamics. I'm so glad you brought up the term caste system. You talked about in other nations where, like I said, there are entire socioeconomic statuses developed out of colorism. Even within the U.S. historically, most of the affluent Black families, Reconstruction era and post then, were lighter skinned. A lot of them kept their bloodlines lighter skinned on purpose because of the affluence that came with that. These things are generational. Those affluent Black families who had the resources to give their kids more than others, they passed it down, they passed it down, they passed it down. What can you pass down when you have nothing?
Nothing. Well,
You
I like
know?
when MLK said it the best. He said, they keep telling us to pull up ourselves up our bootstraps and we have no boots. I love that.
Yeah. That's kind of what I've been trying to say. Yeah.
Right.
There were documents that were re-earthed from the 20th century where Black people who were applying for jobs post-slavery, they included being fair-skinned on the application above their actual skills because it would guarantee them better employment. So I think it's definitely one of the things that determines the distribution.
Okay, so for the people who believe this, for the people who believe that colorism really is one of the determining factors of the power structure, why do you get mad at bleachers then? Why do you get mad and tell people not to bleach their skin then? Because if you truly believe this, then you will be a bleacher. I mean, seriously. And I'm not shaming either side. I'm just saying that, like, you can't say stuff like this and then get mad when people bleach their skin and then they become fair skinned. They become Michael Jackson. So it's like, okay, if you want to tell people that color is like what's going to determine your entire life, it's all about skin color. That's it. That's all that matters. It's going to determine how rich you are. It's going to determine how you're treated. Your skin tone determines your relationships. It determines how famous and popular and marketable you are. Then just don't get mad when people no longer want to be dark skinned. Just don't get mad when people like Kelly Rowland say, fuck this, I'm done, get somebody else to do it. And then they switch over to becoming light skinned.
Distribution of power.
I wanted to say this to the light-skinned people too, because, and I'm glad, in my mind, when we was about to do this, I had a whole different
You thought it was gonna be a debate.
thought. I had a whole different thought of the light-skinned people that can be here. You guys are so earthed, you're so grounded, and that's why it's like, don't forget the history of what's going on to your darker brothers and sisters. I know you won't, but it's time for us to gather together and for us to fight it together, because we can talk about what happened, and you see these people on the social medias and stuff talking all the time. Black people are complaining about blah, 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 blah. It's time for us to have a new Tulsa and say, now we made it. And then, because now the cameras are on everywhere.
Yep.
They bomb us now, we can go, now look.
Right.
We ain't talking about before, today now. And not just this Black person over here or this one over here, but all of us came together, we did this, and you guys did it again. Now what? And then we know we're at war.
And I think to what you're saying, there's a distrust in our own community of one another when it comes to buying and supporting what we own. And I think if we want to have industry in anything, if we want something to grow, we need to build something just like we did back in the 20s and like we did in the 50s, where the Black community was the center of commerce. We had the most educated, we had the most sophisticated. And of course, they were bombed. There were 7 other Black Wall Streets in this country that doesn't get talked about because Tulsa was the biggest one. If you want to see something change, we got to start supporting the people that are they're working on the clothing brands. They're working on the businesses. They want to start the banks. They want to come together. That's how we're going to build a community, and then we can pass something on that they can keep building upon for the future. Because until we do that, all we're doing is preaching to the choir and complaining.
But that starts with the family. That starts at the family.
I agree with you.
100%.
100%.
Okay.
It was very nice to hear your guys' opinions and experiences. And it was also great to share our experiences as well, just so we can all see through the eyes of each other.
I am going to definitely do a comment fully exposed episode on this, but what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.